Hi, Mr. McDonald. Today we're just going to do a short tutorial for you on setting up your clock once you get it home and making sure that it continues to run properly for you. So first and most important thing about this clock to understand is that the clock needs to have a place that's absolutely solid and level, and the location for the location that you choose for the clock is critically important. If you don't have a mantle, then the next best thing would be a shelf of its own to put the clock on. But understand that anything with doors or drawers would be out of the question, so stay away from trying to set it up on things like buffets or china cabinets. Vibration for this clock, it will change the way that the clock runs, any type of vibration. So anything with any fragile furniture, things with small legs or anything like that would be a bad idea. So once you've determined a good location for your clock, again, check to make sure that the location is absolutely level, side to side and front to back. For transporting the clock, we're going to have the pendulum off. So you will need to put the pendulum on it when you get home and when you're about to set it up. So the pendulum, as you can see, has two sides. There's a blank side and then a decorative side, and the side that goes out towards the back of the clock will be the decorative side. So hanging the pendulum on it, you just have to be very careful. Reach in and hook it over the little hook there. Now once the pendulum is on the clock becomes very fragile, and you shouldn't be moving it around any more than you absolutely have to. If you do have to move the clock into position on a mantle or a shelf, at this point it's just a matter of carefully moving the clock around, leaning the clock forward towards yourself to rest the pendulum bob on the back of the mechanism, lift it up and put it into place on the shelf or on the mantle, and then carefully make sure that the clock is positioned properly where you want it to go. And if the clock hasn't started running on its own, just give it a little bit of a jog like that, a little bit of a shift to get the clock running, to make sure that the clock is ticking. And just to make sure that the clock is running properly and it's level and doesn't have any wobbles on it, just to double check it and make sure it isn't wobbling at all in any way. If it does have a little bit of a wobble like it does right now, just make sure that you shim one corner or the other with a little business card or something very thin that'll take care of that little bit of a wobble. Don't want anything that's going to change the swinging of the pendulum to affect the clock running or keeping time. So once it is up and ticking, listen to it, make sure that it's ticking nice and evenly. If you're not sure whether or not it's ticking evenly, just gently lift one side or the other to hear how it changes the tick. And just listen to it very carefully. Put your ear right against it and listen to the way that it ticks. So now that we're sure that the clock is going to run and it's up and keeping, ticking properly, now it's just a matter of basically winding it and setting it on time. When you get it home, it may already be wound. I think we just wound this one up yesterday, so it should be pretty much fully wound. I may have even wound it earlier today. So winding it is done with all three of the keyholes, and you wind it until the clock comes to an absolute stop. This one goes counterclockwise. This one goes counterclockwise, and you can see that I'm actually bending the key when I'm doing this. You could actually bend this key or break the key without doing any damage to the internal mechanism of the clock. So once it's fully wound, then it's a matter of setting it on the right time. In this case, just a matter simply of going ahead a few minutes, but you may have to go past the strike mechanisms on this one or the strike time on these ones. The clock strikes every 15 minutes, and so to set it on the proper time, you just have to go past the 15 minutes, let it chime and strike, and then go on to the next one and continue on until you get to the right time. If the clock is ahead of the actual time, just simply stop it by moving the clock forward. Again, tilting it forward like so to stop the pendulum from swinging, and then wait for the real time to catch up with it and then set it on time. Start the clock again by simply shifting it again to get the clock running again. If you have any questions, we're going to give you a setup sheet that goes with this as well. But if you have any questions, you feel free to call us. The other thing that's important is that when you wind it once a week, you can wind it as often as you like, but at least once a week, always reset it on the proper time. The accuracy on these clocks is, generally speaking, about a minute a day from the factory, so we've got it well within that with our servicing and regulating. But if you find that you will find that it will be out a few minutes over the course of the week, and you should always reset it on time. Whenever you're setting the time on it, you can go backwards or forwards, but you should always make sure that if the hand jams up, that you never force the hand to go in the direction that it doesn't want to go, basically. Okay. As far as the timekeeping is concerned on this one, it's all been regulated. There is an adjustment that can be made internally in the clock to make the clock run faster or slower. But if it's within the 7 minutes a week, it's within its regulating abilities. So you're not going to get any closer than that. You were also asking about shutting off the chimes on this one, and this one did at one point have a hole here to put the other end of a two-ended key in there in order to shut off the chimes. Unfortunately, at some point in its life, that has been taken away. That ability has been taken away. I guess it's the best way to term it. There isn't any key end in there. So whether or not that was a design originally of the clock or not, I'm not sure. But there isn't any way to shut the chimes off on this clock. If you decide that you do not want the clock chiming for any reason, again, the best way to stop the chime is to simply stop the clock. And then when you want the clock chiming again, just start it up again. So that's pretty much all there is to this one. Again, as far as I said, there's going to be a setup sheet that goes with it. And also we will be available to answer any questions that you might have.